Well, hello, friends, and welcome. Pro-life leader Frank Pavone here, director of Priests for Life. Glad to have you with us for another episode of our program. And today, I'm very, very happy to be joined by somebody that we have known for decades, and he has been working for decades in this great pro-life movement. His name is Dr. Randall O'Bannon, and he is with one of the groups that we collaborate with most closely and whose work we value most highly in this movement, the National Right to Life Committee. He serves as the Director of Education and Research, and he's been doing it for, good to be with you, Randall. And you've been doing this for like 3.5 decades, and so we appreciate your perseverance and your expertise. And today, I've asked you to come on because, as you well know, because you've been involved in preparing this report, it's an annual report that the National Right to Life Committee issues on the status of abortion in the United States. So this is the 2025 report, and we wanted to talk with you a little bit about this. First of all, let me reiterate, we value the work National Right to Life does, the lobbying. I know how respected the organization is on Capitol Hill and in state legislatures. The model legislation, the political action, and we've worked closely with the team there on the PAC side to elect pro-life candidates and pro-life presidents over these years, and be involved in Supreme Court justice confirmation battles. And but besides all of that, it's the research, and this is where your area comes in. National Right to Life just does such valuable research that the whole pro-life movement benefits from. So I just want to start by emphasizing that and invite our viewers to go to nrlc.org, which is the website. We're looking forward to your convention, the annual convention at the end of June, and this year it'll be in Overland Park, Kansas. And we just had here at our headquarters, as I think you know, for our national leadership meeting, we had your relatively new executive director, Scott Fishbach, right here at our headquarters. In fact, we did a program with him too that I will remind our viewers to go watch again, especially if they missed it. And Scott is doing a great job, of course, at the helm there, alongside of your president, Carol Tobias. So a great team, and we appreciate all the work and presence of National Right to Life. Friends, again, nrlc.org, you'll find all of this and more. So Dr. O'Bannon, so this report, I was looking forward to this coming out. I do every year, and it just covers a wide range of things, statistics, which is what we want to focus on a little with you here today, but it also speaks about the legal landscape, judicial landscape, political landscape, Supreme Court decisions, state ballot initiatives. That's been a big thing, especially since this last November's elections, and so much more. Tell us first of all about how is this report put together, because you have a big role, but then there are many others on your team that do as well.
Yes, what we do, Frank, is we have the different department heads that are here at National Right to Life, and we're asked to take a look at particular issues that are relevant, that have been important in the past year or going to be important in the coming year, and to address those and sort of give people a understanding of the status of the matters, where things stand, and where things may be going, so they have a good understanding of what's happening in the pro-life movement and in the country with regard to abortion, infanticide, and euthanasia.
The 50-page report, is this accessible easily at the nrlc.org website, by the way?
Yes, you should be able to get that just by going to nrlc.org. And I think there's probably a link right there for the latest status of abortion report, and you can download the whole thing, and you can read this section of it a night for a couple of weeks, and I think you'll get plenty of good reading.
It is very, very educational reading. So let's talk about statistics. I want to ask you a general question first, and that is the strategic importance of statistics. For some people, numbers, statistics, it's like, oh, it's kind of dry information. But there really is a strategic value to data that tells us how many abortions are happening, what stage of pregnancy, for example, are these abortions, what method is used, what after effects are there. Tell us just in general why it's important for the pro-life movement in our effort to ultimately end abortion to know the numbers.
Yes. What I tell people, and sometimes when we have students at our National Right to Life Academy, is to learn how to understand that numbers tell a story. There's always a story there. So, for example, if you can look at the statistics and say, okay, there were this many a million, this many 100,000s of abortions, but each one of those is an individual mother, an individual child, or more children. That each one has a story of what's going on, and the numbers that we record out there are going to tell us something about their story, about maybe how the situation occurred, what they did, what sort of method were they convinced to use? Did it turn out to be something that put their own life at risk as well as that of their child? How far along was the child when this happened? Had they had previous abortions? Had they had previous births? Each one of these things is going to be something that you can find out from statistics that give you an idea. And what's important, especially if you are able to determine things like the reasons they had abortion, is what do we need to do as a pro-life movement to convince mothers to choose life for their children. And if you have an idea of why they chose to have abortions in the past, you'll have an idea of what you could do differently to maybe convince them to give their child a chance at life. So it's very important to follow those numbers, to see the sort of data and statistics that are out there, because they're going to tell you not just stories, they're going to give you a good idea of what we can do and what's effective and maybe what's not in making a difference for these women and these mothers and their babies.
Randall, building on what you just said, I've often found that as we talk with the American people about abortion, and they, of course, we know the public is conflicted about abortion, but they seem to have in the back of their mind somewhere some kind of vague assumption about how many abortions are happening in the first place. And I find that just being able to quote a number without even making an ethical, moral, or philosophical argument against abortion, just a number will convince many people that, wait a minute, something's wrong here. I didn't think there were that many abortions, right? And I'm sure you'll find the same thing. Just the numbers themselves become an argument that we have gone over the edge, that we're too extreme. There's too many abortions happening, because I think most Americans feel like, there should be a certain containment of this, a certain limit. And given that, give us some guidance here, because many who are watching do give pro-life talks. They write pro-life articles. And, we like to come up with a number. We say, well, Roe v. Wade legalized abortion in 1973. Since then, there have been X number of abortions. Let's start with the grand total. What is a safe, accurate, and defensible number for pro-life spokespersons and activists to use to say how many abortions have there actually been since it was legalized?
Right. That is important to understand that. And because most people don't understand how serious it is. If nothing else, even if you said, like you said, if they don't understand or appreciate it as a moral issue, the fact that it has been millions is an indication that it is a major historical thing to take consideration of, a major social event as far as in the history of our country. Now, what we've done is we've tried to track the number of abortions that have occurred since 1973. What we did was we in our fact sheets, we tried to add the number every year. That became somewhat somewhat difficult with Dobbs because they changed the way they counted numbers, and different states have had changed their policies. And so what we did was we split our fact sheets in the past, in the last year or so, into two different fact sheets. And one of those is deals with what we call the legacy of Roe v. Wade, which measures the number of abortions that occurred from 1973 through 2022 when we had Dobbs. And so what we got there was it looks like, from looking at the numbers that we have seen and estimating also for undercounts, that there were 64 million babies that at least lost their lives, or 64 million abortions. The fact that some of those also involved twins or more would probably mean that the number of lives were actually a lot more lost than that. But nevertheless, we do believe that we can, on solid ground, say that there were 64 million abortions in those 5 decades that occurred while Roe was the law of the land.
That's a very helpful thing to know. 64 is the number, 64 million. Randall, and by the way, those that are just joining us, we're talking with Dr. Randall O'Bannon, National Right to Life Committee. He's the Director of Education and Research, and he has been instrumental in issuing this, preparing this report that was just issued, The Status of Abortion in the United States, 2025. Please connect with this report at nrlc.org. Randall, going further on what you just said, is it accurate to say that abortion is the number one cause of death in our country and in the world?
Well, at 64 million, I think that's pretty obvious. It is a huge. I mean, that's the population of several of our states combined together. I think at one point it was 17. I think it may be more states than that, but it's a huge number, a huge portion of what would be the population of the United States. That's a greater population than it is the size of several countries don't have populations that big currently. So 64 million isn't a humongous number, a huge number, and it's a devastating loss to our country.
At the timeline here, as you say, you start counting in 73. Of course, abortions didn't start there. I mean, at the time of Roe v. Wade, there were already like over 500,000 abortions occurring in the United States every year, right? Because some states legalized it prior to Roe. But give us a little arc here of how the numbers of abortions rose, when they peaked, when they started going down, and then explain to us the difference between the numbers of abortions versus what we call the abortion rate and the abortion ratio.
Okay, sure. Obviously, yes, you're correct that there were abortions that were being performed in the United States, in certain states, before 1973. It was the court's decision in Roe v. Wade in 1973 that opened this up to abortion on demand in all 50 states throughout our pregnancy. And so there were about maybe 700,000 or so in there, or 600,000 or so in the first year of Roe v. Wade, and they rose pretty quickly. As it became more and more accepted and more performed in the United States, till it reached over 1 million like in 1975, and then got up to 1.5 million or 1.5 million around 1980. And it stayed between 1.5 and 1.6 million a year through 1990, and then it began to drop. I point out that it began to drop because different pro-life measures had started to be finally allowed by the courts and were put into place, so that, for example, as soon as the parental involvement was allowed by the court and began to be able to put in place the Hyde Amendment, the abortion rates, even though the number continued to go up for a little bit in the 1980s, the abortion rate began to sort of table off and slow down. But then in 1990, it really began to drop. So it dropped from 1.6 million down to 1.3 million in 2000, and then finally below 1 million for the first time in like 2013, which was a huge achievement for the pro-life movement, because it meant like over 500,000 babies a year that used to be aborted were now living and being able to go forward. And it dropped for a number of years until about, say, 2019, 2020, and it began to move up again. And the reason being for that is we've had this sort of latent factor of chemical abortion that has been involved since 2000, and those gradually grew to the point where they got to, they're almost now 2/3 of the abortions performed in the United States, those with mifepristone and misoprostol. And so those were in the process of increasing when Dobbs came down. When Dobbs came down, immediately abortion dropped in a lot of the states where they had protections in place. But some of the people simply were recruited by the abortion industry to travel to another state and have their abortions there. And they also began mailing abortion pills, thanks to the Biden administration, mailing abortion pills to women's homes. And so that has blunted the what was a decrease going on to the point where they're now going up, or seem to be going up in the last few years heading into Dobbs. And there's still some more abortions still being performed, thanks to, like I said, the Biden administration and the FDA and the abortion industry recruiting and helping to pay for the travel of women crossing state lines.
The and just briefly for our listeners, when we talk about the abortion rate, what is that, and the abortion ratio? Distinguish those for us.
Yeah, there are measures that they sort of determine. At the abortion rate is when you take a look at the number of abortions per say 1,000 women of reproductive age in the United States. Now, I have to hedge it a little bit because different entities measure these slightly differently, but nevertheless, they're still sort of the same basic measure. So the rate is sort of looking at the whole framework of reproductive age women in the United States. What's the percentage of those who would have abortion in a given year? And that would give you the abortion rate. So it might be 213 women out of 1,000 of women of reproductive age would have abortions in a given year. And that would give you a abortion rate of 2113 or something. I'm sorry, 213. The abortion ratio, on the other hand, is when you're actually sort of measuring abortions versus or against the number of live births. Now, we don't actually, some people sometimes mistakenly understand that as in terms of versus pregnancies, but because we don't know the actual number of miscarriages or stillbirths, something like this, what they actually do with these is typically sort of measure the number of abortions against, or the ratio of those against the number of births, that live births that have occurred. So, like I said, different ones, they're measured differently, but you might say that, so by one measure, there might be 30 abortions for every 100 live births. Now, that's not 30%, because that's not 30 out of 100 pregnancies, but 30 out of 130 in that situation. But nevertheless, that was how somebody would give you, say, an abortion ratio of 30.
Okay, yeah, that's very helpful, because sometimes you see in popular, pro-life educational materials, like, for example, I've seen these cards where you have, maybe you have 3 babies and one of them is grayed out, and they're trying to illustrate graphically what the abortion ratio is. So, but I guess and we're close to the end of our time here, but there's a couple of burning important questions. Can you tell our people, look, have the pro-life laws, your conclusion as a researcher, the pro-life laws, and particularly the Dobbs decision, reversing Roe v. Wade, as you mentioned, we see certain numbers going up, but there's really no question that pro-life laws and pro-life court decisions have saved lives, right? People can safely say that.
Definitely.
And
definitely,
then,
you can. Like I said,
yes, go ahead.
Like I said, you definitely can. You can see that lives have been saved. we know that the abortion industry was not caught flat-footed. They knew it was coming. They were prepared. They started turning a lot of their abortion clinics in what I call, I guess, pro-life states into like travel centers. And the women would come there and they'd say, okay, we can get you to travel up here. We'll pay for your travel. Some places they even paid for their abortions if you'll go and get your abortion done in this neighboring state or something like that. So they caught a lot of those that may have otherwise stayed home and had their babies and convinced them to travel. Like I said, the abortion industry has also been planning for a long time to be able to get abortions using chemical abortions, especially with pills that they put in the mail and they shipped to women's homes. And it was thanks to the Biden administration that made that possible. So those two things, are they happening? Yes, they're happening. Are they making it so that there are abortions of women in pro-life states where there's protections in place for unborn children so that there are still women from those states having abortions? Yes. Are they mailing pills to some of the women in those states? Yes. Those are things that we're trying to figure out how to deal with legislatively and in a policy standpoint. But we also know, and there have been studies that have actually shown this, that a number of women, when they face the situation where there are no longer operating abortion clinics in their states, they have decided that, I don't know if maybe they take that as a sign from God that they can, in fact, raise this child, give birth and raise this child, and they are. And we've seen, for example, there was one study out of Texas where they looked at, and they said that about 3% increase in births, which was for the year that they were looking at, like 10,000 births that had occurred that would not have occurred without these pro-life laws. We've seen other sorts of studies that are out there, like in 2024, one that was saying how that there was a couple of percentages, and that's a small percentage, but if you enterprise this represents thousands and thousands of babies that are being born in these states that otherwise would not have been if it wasn't for these new pro-life protections that are in place, thanks to the overturning of Roe v. Wade. We're going to continue to be in a competition for the lives and the souls of these mothers and these babies between us and the abortion industry. They're going to try to tell them that they can still get abortions and that they will be happy to do it for them. In many cases, pay for them. That they'll try to convince them that these chemical abortions are simple, safe, and easy when they're nothing like that. But if they will simply listen and understand that there are alternatives that are out there that are better for them and for their babies, as becoming increasingly clear in many of these pro-life states, we will continue to see lives saved. And that's what this is all about. It's not about numbers. It's about the lives that are saved. And both the numbers tell us that we're having some impact and it's making a real difference and lives are being saved.
Well, we thank you, Dr. Randall O'Bannon, for giving us the numbers. And most importantly, as you just said, for what you and all your colleagues at National Right to Life do to save these lives and to preserve these moms and dads from a lifetime of regret. It's a pleasure to talk with you, my friend. We'll see you at the National Right to Life Convention. And friends, you've been listening to Dr. Randall O'Bannon, Director of Education and Research for the National Right to Life Committee. Please go to nrlc.org, not only for this report on the status of abortion in America, but for all their fantastic resources. Dr. Randall O'Bannon, thank you so much.
Hello, I'm Dr. Alveda King, board member of Priest for Life. More money is being spent in America to kill babies in the womb than to save them. Together, we need to change that, and today I want to invite you to support our work at Priest for Life. Why ours rather than other groups? Because we have a unique team that helps lead in every arena of the fight against abortion, and we activate the churches where you find people who are most likely to get involved in that fight. To awaken a pastor about abortion is to awaken thousands of people he serves. We do not receive church funding or government grants. We rely on you for individual donations. We have a very high evaluation among charities and top security on our donation site, prolifegift.org. You can go there for a one-time gift or to become a monthly donor, or you can call us at 321-500-1000.
The holy season of Lent calls us to repentance and holiness as we prepare to celebrate the Paschal mystery. Christ's death and resurrection makes us the people of life. The Tree of Life provides prayers and reflections that show the connections between Lent and our commitment to defend the unborn. Please scan the QR code to order yours now.